At exactly 6:32 hours, the airspace above the southern Caribbean transformed from a routine patrol corridor into the opening stage of an international incident. Cruising at 23,000 feet, a single FA-18E Super Hornet, callsign Striker 7, was wrapping up its third consecutive hour of counter-narcotic surveillance along one of the hemisphere's most strategically contested shipping lanes. The pilot's instruments were clean. His radar picture showed nothing threatening within range. He had no reason to think this morning would end any differently than the 40 missions before it. He was wrong. Two Venezuelan F-16A Fighting Falcons were already airborne out of El Libertador Air Base, Pratt & Whitney F-100PW 200 turbofan engines pushing hard through 15,000 feet in full afterburner. Their ground-hugging approach had kept them invisible. Nap of the Earth, skimming the coastline below 500 feet, their APG-66 fire control radars already burning a lock onto Striker 7 from 70 miles out. Their orders carried the full weight of Caracas: intercept the American, make him uncomfortable, and if the political moment demanded it, put him in the water. This was not impulsive aggression, it was the calculated product of weeks of escalating friction as United States Navy counter-narcotics operations cut deeper into shipping corridors that Venezuela's government considered an economic lifeline. The Maduro administration had made a strategic wager that one sharp confrontation in international airspace would make Washington reconsider. What unfolded in the next 9 minutes would show precisely how badly that wager was miscalculated. Here's what makes this situation worth understanding. The Caribbean is not simply a tropical backdrop for vacation photographs. 90% of all cocaine bound for North American markets moves through these waters, over 1,000 tons annually. When the United States Navy intensified its patrol presence, it was economic attrition aimed directly at a revenue stream that kept the Venezuelan military supplied and its senior leadership comfortable. The Americans were not there by accident. The Venezuelans were not there by accident. A collision between those two facts was only a matter of time. The pilot of Striker 7 was not thinking about geopolitics. His FA-18E Super Hornet carried twin General Electric F-414 GE-400 turbofan engines producing 22,000 pounds of thrust each. His AN/APG-79 active electronically scanned array radar swept the airspace with the kind of persistent, multi-target tracking that would have seemed like science fiction a generation ago. His weapons load was light for a reason. 2 AIM-120C AMRAMs on the wing pylons, 2 AIM-9X Sidewinders for close-in work. Standard counter-narcotics configuration. He was not expecting a fight. Then his radar warning receiver fired off every alarm it had. Both F-16S had broken from their terrain following profile and accelerated hard toward his position. Aggressive intercept geometry, closing fast. The pilot transmitted immediately to USS Porter, an Arleigh Burke-class Flight 2A guided missile destroyer positioned 80 miles to the north. In the destroyer's Combat Information Center, the AN/SPY-1D phased array radar, a system capable of tracking hundreds of contacts simultaneously across hundreds of miles, had already been painting both Venezuelan aircraft since before Striker 7's own warning system activated. The picture on Porter's screens was clinically precise. 2 F-16, full afterburner. Closure rate 600 knots. Time to intercept, 4 minutes. The Venezuelan pilots were operating without a modern data link. No beyond visual range network picture. Just their own onboard radars, Israeli Python 4 infrared-guided missiles, and a pair of AIM-9L Sidewinders. American technology transferred to Venezuela years before the relationship between the two nations turned adversarial. The lead pilot was flying a Block 15 OCU Fighting Falcon delivered in 1984, an airframe that had been maintained through sanctions and spare parts shortages with the kind of determination that deserves a degree of professional respect. He knew every limitation of his aircraft. He also knew the gap between his capabilities and the Super Hornets was not a gap. It was a canyon. The plan relied on speed, aggression, and the mathematics of closing distance faster than the opponent could react. Get inside the AIM-120's preferred engagement envelope. Fire first, break off, survive on audacity when technology would not cooperate. The American pilot did not give them the chance. He turned into the threat, selected afterburner, and climbed. Basic fighter doctrine, executed without hesitation. Altitude is energy. Energy is life. First shot is survival. His master arm went live. AIM-120 selected. At 52 miles out, both Venezuelan jets executed a coordinated split, one braking hard left, one braking hard right, forcing a targeting dilemma. One Super Hornet, two targets pulling in opposite directions. Fire on both, except diluted probability on each. He fired both AIM-100s and 20s in quick succession. The active radar-guided missiles accelerated to Mach 4, each 12 feet long and carrying 44 pounds of high-explosive fragmentation behind a guidance system that does not get confused, does not hesitate, and does not negotiate with evasive maneuvering. It simply tracks. Time to impact, 38 seconds. Both Venezuelan pilots had trained for this exact scenario. The instant their radar warning receivers screamed missile launch, both aircraft went defensive simultaneously. Chaff clouds, magnesium flares. High-G evasive turns that compressed their spinal columns and tunneled their vision. The wingman turned directly into the inbound missile, rolled inverted, and dove hard into ground clutter. The AIM-120 Seeker lost its solution in the radar return from the ocean surface below. Proximity fuse triggered harmlessly 200 feet above the water. One missile wasted. The lead pilot was not that fortunate. His defensive brake was technically correct. His timing was not. The first AIM-120 tracked through 3 hard turns, its guidance computer continuously recalculating intercept geometry. Proximity fuse triggered at 20 feet. The fragmentation warhead detonated in a sphere of high-velocity tungsten rods. His left wing absorbed the main energy of the blast. Fuel tanks ruptured, hydraulic lines severed, control surfaces shredded. The F-16 entered an uncontrollable roll. Fire warnings illuminated. Flight control computer offline. At 0637, 5 minutes into the engagement, he reached for the ejection handle. Martin Baker punched him clear of a $40 million airframe that was already dying. His wingman kept attacking. The surviving F-16 did not break off, did not abort. The pilot pressed forward in a pure head-on attack, closure rate now 1,200 knots as both aircraft drove toward each other across shrinking airspace. At 18 miles and closing, he released his Python 4 missiles. Both infrared seekers locked onto the thermal signature of the Super Hornet's engine exhausts and accelerated toward them at Mach 4. 9 miles, 7 miles, 5. The American pilot cut power, deployed chaff and flares in a continuous stream, and broke hard right into a 9G defensive turn that sent gray edges creeping across his visual field. The aircraft's AN/ALQ-214 electronic countermeasures system worked through its programmed response. One Python 4 chased a flare burning hotter than the engines and flew harmlessly into the ocean. The second missile was smarter. Its seeker filtered the decoys, reacquired the true heat source, and went terminal. Active seeker, final intercept trajectory, probability of hit calculated at 97%. The remaining 3% was physics offering a courtesy that physics rarely extends. Impact in 6 seconds. The pilot executed the only option remaining. He pointed the nose at the ocean and shoved the throttles through the afterburner detent. The Super Hornet plummeted from 20,000 feet. The Python 4 followed, pulling its own sustaining lead angle at Mach 4. 3,000 feet, 2,000, 1,000. At 700 feet above the Caribbean, the missile's proximity fuse activated. The fragmentation warhead detonated 40 feet aft of the tail. Shrapnel tore through both vertical stabilizers. Debris ingested by both engines triggered compressor stalls and then catastrophic failure simultaneously. Fire warning lights across every panel. At 0638, 4 words went out over the emergency frequency. Striker 7 is ejecting. The Martin Baker SJU 5/6 seat fired. He rocketed clear of the airframe at 300 feet, parachute deploying on automatic sequencing. He hit the water 30 seconds later and watched his $67 million aircraft carve a burning arc into the ocean below. Alive, wet, uninjured. His jet was wreckage spreading across a half-mile of Caribbean surface. Above him, the surviving Venezuelan F-16 pilot pulled into a climbing victory roll. That celebration had a 90-second shelf life. USS Porter's Combat Information Center had not looked away for a single second. The moment Striker 7's transponder went off the air, the tactical action officer did not deliberate. The rules of engagement were not ambiguous. American forces attacked. Response authorized. Weapons free. The Aegis combat system engaged. Porter's Mark 41. Vertical launch system holds 96 cells. The standard loadout includes RIM-174 Standard Missile 6 interceptors, a weapon developed to engage ballistic missiles and high-altitude bombers at ranges exceeding 200 nautical miles. Using an SM-6 against a single fourth-generation fighter in a low-altitude turning fight is the naval equivalent of deploying an artillery battery to handle a parking dispute. But the SM-6 carries one advantage that made the math simple. Its active radar seeker requires no continuous illumination. Fire and forget. The ship does not need to hold a lock. The missile finds its own way. At 0640, two SM-6 missiles erupted from Porter's forward launch cells. Twin solid fuel motors ignited vertically, the missiles pitching over and arcing toward their designated target at Mach 3.5. The Venezuelan pilot's radar warning receiver activated at 22 seconds to impact. Two new tracks, supersonic, inbound from the north. He broke hard, dumped chaff, went maximum afterburner. None of it mattered. The SM-6 does not care about afterburner. It does not lose its nerve during defensive maneuvering. At 12 miles, the active seeker acquired the target and began making terminal corrections. 40 Gs in the final phase, a load factor that would destroy any human pilot's ability to function, even if a human pilot was somehow aboard the missile. At 0641, the proximity fuse detonated. 133 pounds of high-explosive fragmentation turned the F-16 into an expanding debris field of aluminum and burning fuel. The pilot never knew what hit him. The second SM-6, with no target remaining, self-destructed over open water. Total elapsed time from Striker 7's ejection to the F-16's destruction, 90 seconds. The engagement was not finished. Within 6 hours, USS Gerald R. Ford's flight deck launched 4 FA-18E Super Hornets on a suppression of enemy air defenses mission, targeting the radar network that formed the spine of Venezuela's integrated air defense coverage around Caracas. The target list was specific: 2 Chinese-manufactured JY-27 early warning radars and 1 Russian 9S-32ME fire control radar that provided guidance for ground-based air defense systems protecting the capital. The strike package carried AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missiles, weapons that home on the electromagnetic emissions of active radar systems. They do not require the pilot to see the target. They require only that the target turn itself on. At 1300 hours, Venezuelan radar operators made the decision that sealed their fate. They activated their systems. The moment those emitters went live, they transmitted their precise coordinates to every AGM-88 seeker head within range. 4 missiles launched. 4 radar sites on the target list. The mathematics were not complicated. The first JY-27 radar ceased to exist at Mach 2 impact velocity. The explosion vaporized the antenna array and killed 3 operators. The second JY-27 lasted 6 seconds longer before the same result occurred. The Russian 9S-32ME attempted an emergency shutdown. The shutdown sequence takes longer than 6 seconds. Venezuela's integrated air defense network went dark. Total seed mission cost $11.8 million. 3 radar installations neutralized. 12 personnel killed. The air defense picture over northern Venezuela degraded to the level of a nation that doesn't own functional radar. The final ledger tells the complete story. Venezuela committed 2 F-16A Fighting Falcons to this engagement. Unit cost on the international market, $40 million each. That's $80 million in airframes destroyed, plus 3 radar installations valued at approximately $60 million combined. Total Venezuelan losses, $140 million in hardware, 12 personnel killed, 2 pilots recovered from the water, a counter-narcotics patrol corridor that remained exactly as active the following morning as it had been the morning this engagement occurred. The United States lost 1 FA-18E Super Hornet, $67 million. 1 pilot recovered safely with no injuries. Munitions expended in response, 2 SM-6 missiles at $4.2 million combined, 4 AGM-88 HARM missiles at $7.6 million combined. Total American cost to absorb the attack and eliminate the threat, $78.8 million. 1 recovered pilot, 0 fatalities. The loss exchange ratio was 1.8 to 1 in monetary terms. In operational terms, it was not close. Venezuela demonstrated the limits of its air combat capability to every intelligence service watching. The United States demonstrated that attacking its aircraft in international airspace produces a response measured in minutes, not hours, and calibrated in overwhelming force, not proportional restraint. This is where the mathematics become merciless. The Venezuelan command structure appears to have operated on the assumption that the United States would absorb an air intercept without responding beyond the immediate engagement. That assumption did not survive contact with the actual policy. The moment Striker 7 ejected, the USS Porter's combat system was already processing launch authority. The moment the SM-6 impacts were confirmed, the strike planners aboard Gerald R. Ford were already building the CID target package. There was no deliberation. There was no escalation ladder being climbed rung by rung. The response arrived as a complete package, delivered with the speed and finality of a system that had already wargamed every branch of this scenario. Modern air combat is decided before the first missile launches. It is decided by sensor range, data link architecture, and the depth of defensive layering behind any single aircraft operating in contested airspace. Striker 7 was never alone. He had Porter's SPY-1D painting the engagement from 80 miles away. He had the Ford's combat air control network tracking his every position. He had SM-6 coverage extending hundreds of miles in every direction from the destroyer's position. The Venezuelan pilots were not intercepting a lone jet. They were probing the outermost edge of a layered defense system that began responding the moment their radars first went active over El Libertador Air Base. Fourth-generation fighters operating without modern data links, without AESA radar capability, without integrated battle network connectivity, are not operating in the same conflict as the opponent they're engaging. They are operating in a different era's version of that conflict. The Venezuelan F-16S were flying 1984 technology against a system designed in 2024. That gap is not bridgeable by training, aggression, or political determination. Physics and signal processing do not recognize the courage of the pilot behind the throttle. Both pilots who survived this engagement were recovered from the Caribbean. They followed orders. They flew professionally within the limits of their aircraft and their doctrine. The failure was not in the cockpit. It was in the command structure that sent them into an engagement where the outcome was determined by sensor architecture before either aircraft crossed into weapons range. This is the lesson that Beijing and Moscow extracted from the engagement reports. Not that Venezuela failed due to poor piloting, but that any fourth-generation platform without full network integration, attempting to engage a carrier-based asset operating inside a layered escort network, will lose. The sensor picture is too deep. The response time is too fast. The weapons range advantage is too large. There is no tactical solution that compensates for a 50 nautical mile deficit in effective engagement range. Venezuela came looking for deterrence. It found the thing deterrence is built to prevent, and then found the response to that thing delivered before the smoke from the first engagement had cleared the water. Some lessons are available in open-source technical literature priced at nothing. This particular lesson cost $140 million and 12 lives, and produced exactly the same operational conclusion that the open-source literature would have provided for free. In the dark water of the Caribbean, the facts are not complicated. You do not intercept American carrier aircraft in international airspace and expect the equation to resolve in your favor. Not because of politics, not because of history, but because of physics, sensors, and the merciless arithmetic of modern air combat. If this breakdown gave you a clearer picture of how these engagements actually unfold, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who thinks air superiority is a simple proposition. The math is never as simple as the people ordering the mission believe it to be.